Another very common obstacle that we definitely need to talk about is our good friend procrastination. We justify procrastination in all sorts of ways. Well, I might mess up. I'm not sure how to do it. I don't feel like doing it. I'm just better when I'm up against a deadline. It's too hard or boring or unpleasant. It doesn't technically need to be done yet. If I take a nap now, maybe I'll feel more like doing the thing later. Or if I watch Netflix right now, maybe I'll be more relaxed and ready to be productive later. Any and all reason we can think of to avoid actually taking action and doing the thing. Well, research tells us that procrastination happens basically for two general reasons. One is we feel like we're in the wrong mood or internal state to complete a task in the moment. And two, we assume that internal state or mood will change in the future and then we'll be able to be productive. Do you see the problem here? It's all based around our internal state needing to be a certain way before we can take action. So all this procrastination and trying to play games with ourselves to convince ourselves to do things just leads to the vortex of prolonged and inevitable suffering. It's a nasty cycle where putting off a task we need to do makes us feel anxious or guilty or ashamed or more stressed. And then the next time we approach that task with all that extra stored up anxiety and guilt, which makes it even less likely that we're going to be able to get started. So we put it off again, which stores even more of that anxiety and guilt for the next time we approach the task. And the stress is super overwhelming, so it becomes this cycle where pretty soon we're not putting our energy into starting, we're putting all of our energy into avoiding. All of our energy is taken up by moving away from or avoiding the thing that we know we need to do. And here's the best part, by which I mean the worst part. Do we learn our lesson? Do we learn something from this procrastination cycle? No, we just do it all over again. And again here, I just want to acknowledge this is all very hard, very normal, very human stuff. It's not easy to change this up. But let's put this all together and talk about what you can do. So we've established that the typical motivation paradigm is too dependent on certain thoughts and feelings being present before we take action. From that paradigm, the only available answer is to try to change your thoughts and feelings so that you can then do the thing. So you try to make certain feelings show up, or you try to force motivation. The alternative is simple to say but hard to do. It is to accept whatever feelings are or are not there, and to save the energy you spend fighting with yourself and instead direct that energy toward actually taking steps. Conceptually simple, hard to do, but way more effective than fighting with yourself and getting stuck in that paradigm of having to feel a certain way before you can do things. And the more you take action, even when you don't feel like it, the more you sort of build up this skill, you build up this strength. And the more you create a muscle memory or experiential memory of a sort, of knowing that in the past you were able to do something even when you didn't feel like it. One way to think more concretely about exercising will is, at the very least, can you get started? Can you take a step? And one reason this frequently helps is it produces something called the Zeigarnik effect, which was discovered by a researcher named Bluma Zeigarnik in the 1920s. Her research showed that people have better memory for tasks they have not yet completed. People were twice as good at remembering interrupted tasks as opposed to tasks they had already finished. What this means for us is that once you've started something that you haven't yet finished, the brain kind of wants to get back to it. It wants to check that thing off its list. And we can use this effect by just getting started on something, taking the first step. There are a lot of ways to at least get started on a task. Maybe it's first focusing on the things that you can do that can be finished and done in a minute or two. The simplest and fastest things on your list. Like picking up the phone to make that appointment or responding to those emails. It gets the wheels turning. It generates a bit of momentum. It creates an itch in your brain that your brain wants to scratch and get back to later. For really big, overwhelming, multifaceted tasks, one way to focus on getting started is narrowing down to the next micro-concrete task that you can identify, that you can actually do, and at least focusing your energy on doing that one thing. Sometimes just setting the stage helps. Taking that step or action to get the thing ready to do is still a form of action. Or set out your clothes and shoes for that workout you know you need to do later, but you're probably not going to feel like doing when the moment comes. Or put out the tools and things you'll need to complete a task so that you can see them, so that they're visible when it comes time to do that thing, so that they'll be impossible to ignore. All of these still constitute taking actual action and are far more productive than trying to think yourself into feeling like doing a thing. And sometimes, as a bonus, not always, but sometimes that's when some of those feelings start to show up. A little bit of motivation comes after you've started, a little bit of interest or energy or confidence, or a sense of satisfaction about finally doing this thing. Sometimes it's after you've started that those feelings finally decide to join in.